Hey guys, and welcome to Aussie Reviews. Well, today's review is going to be very thought-provoking because it's going to ask you the question of whether or not you think that the Australian gun laws that were brought in 1996 are a success or not. So what we always hear in the media here is how from 1996 we have dramatically reduced our gun homicide rate, and we've also reduced suicides, and there also hasn't been a mass shooting since that date of 1996. So what I want to do is just get your thought process provoked here, guys. And I want to put out some stats and figures for you to actually think about yourself and come to your own conclusion. So let's start with the stats. Okay, so the website here is the Australian Institute of Criminology, which is a government website here in Australia. Now, when you actually have a look at the homicide rate with firearms, we have from 1995 through to 2013. Now, looking at the rates there, 1995 there was 59 deaths with a firearm via homicide. In 96 there was 98. In 97 there was 75. In 98 there was 54, in 99 there was 61, year 2000 there was 59, 2001 49, 2002 42, 2003 38, 2004 33, 2005 26, 2006 46, 2007 34, 2008 31, 2009 30, 2010 39, 2011 41, 2012 43, and 2013 there were 47 deaths or homicides with the use of a firearm. So what we are continually told is the downward spiral is only due to the implementation of the 1996 gun laws. Now when you look at this actual graph here, you can see an average decline in that time. Couple of spikes. For example, we've got from 1998 a jump from 54 to 1999 to 61 deaths. Very much the same. 2005 to 2006 it jumped from 26 to 46. But overall there is an average decline, okay, or a downward trend in the actual homicides with a firearm. What I like to look at though is prior to 1996, and when we do that, we're over now on the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which is also a government website here in Australia. Very interesting here when you look at the number of deaths for homicides. In 1980 we had 109, and then it goes right down to 1995. Very interestingly though, have a look at this. It says the Crude firearms death rate declined from 4.8 deaths per 100,000 population in 1980 to 2.6 in 1995. This represented a decline of 46% over a period of 16 years. So that means prior to Port Arthur and the new gun laws coming in 1996, for the period of 16 years prior to that happening, we almost halved our homicide rate with firearms. Going back now, having a look at another page on the Australian Institute of Criminology. Very interesting here, they talk about the firearm use in homicides has declined by more than half since 1989 to 1990. And then they talk about an upward trend in the use of knives and sharp instruments. So we've got both the Australian Institute of Criminology and also the Australian Bureau of Statistics saying that we have had the same downward trend from 1980 right through until now. Okay, if you have a look at 1996 here, where we had 98 deaths, which obviously includes Port Arthur, and then have a look at 2013, which is 47 deaths, yes, you could say, well, since the implementation of the Australian gun laws in 96, we have halved our homicide rate. But that's very misleading. Why don't we have a look at the 16 years prior to 1996, which clearly shows that it has been on that same downward trend and almost halved in that 16-year period. Okay, so it's a complete myth that the 1996 gun laws have dramatically changed or reduced our homicide rate with firearms. Now, the other thing that we're told is the suicide rate in Australia has dramatically dropped due to the implementation of these 1996 gun laws. We're told that 74% it's reduced by, saving over 200 lives per year. Once again, let's have a look at the data. So back on the Australian Bureau of Statistics website here, and according to them, here's the number of suicides. And they've had a look and analysed a period from 2004 through to 2013, which you can clearly see from the graph here. Apart from a few downward trends, it is on an average upward spiral. Okay, so suicides have actually increased since the 1996 gun laws. And when you have a further look at suicide rates here in Australia, you can see that firearms are responsible for such small numbers in the overall scheme of suicide. Now, my personal view is why should you be concentrating on one method of suicide? Shouldn't it be the fact that suicide itself should be the issue that's addressed here? Let's have a look at the statistics. So back on the Australian Bureau of Statistics page here, and they've analysed 2012 here. Now, for 2012, there are a total of 2,535 people that suicided here in Australia. Out of that number, we have only 173 of those that have suicided with a firearm. However, you look at hanging as the top method at 1,379, followed by poisonings at 582. Now, as I say, the actual suicide rates are on the increase. So what does it really matter if you're actually banning or prohibiting or restricting a certain type of method, and then they just go to using another method and the overall suicide rate is just increasing? Can you actually claim that the laws you bring in are a success? So what about the claim from a lot of the anti-gunners that firearms are just too dangerous to have in the community? Let's have a look at accidents. How many accidents do people have here in Australia using firearms? So according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, accidental deaths, you have 4 in 2012 from firearms. When you look at how many people accidentally fell to their death in 2012, you have almost 2,000 at 1,997 people. So that means that you're actually 500 times more likely to die by accidentally falling than you are by using a firearm here in Australia. So looking at that, guys, are licensed firearm owners really a threat? 4 accidental deaths in a single year compared to almost 2,000 with accidental falls. Now remember when John Howard said in 1996 as the Prime Minister, he's sorry, there is no other way. And he said that there was no other way to ensure public safety other than getting rid of the semi-automatic long arms. Let's have a look once again at the evidence. So the page I'm on here is the PM transcripts, which is transcripts from the Prime Ministers of Australia. So what we've actually got here, and you can see further down when John Howard talks about a couple of things that I want to talk about here. So first of all, let's have a look at this. Now, I don't pretend for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, that the decision that we have taken is going to guarantee that in the future there won't be other mass murders. I don't pretend that for a moment. What I do argue to you, my friends, is that it will significantly reduce the likelihood of those occurring in the future. Okay, so let's have a look now at the actual massacres since 1996. So the only page that I could find that listed all of them was Wikipedia. Now look, fair enough, take it with a grain of salt, guys, but it still lists fairly accurately the different dates and the amount of people that have died and become injured. So let's be fair, let's go after 1996 here. So we've got Port Arthur Massacre, 28th of April 1996, 35 people killed and 24 injured. And that was the reason that we ended up having the Australian gun laws, or the new ones that have been introduced. So if you look down, and some people might want to look at different methods, okay? So people might look at Cairns, for example, where they've had 8 people stabbed to death on the 19th of December 2014. Or arson attack on 23rd of June 2000 at Childers, where 15 people were burnt to death. But to be fair, guys, let's stick just to the topic at hand, which is shooting. Now, after Port Arthur, the next reported shooting here, massacre, was on Monash University, 21st of October 2002, Melbourne, Victoria. 2 people killed, 5 people injured. Now, that was a shooting spree by a Chinese student at the Monash University using handguns, or a combination of, I believe. Then when you go down further from that, another shooting that took place on the 29th of April 2011 was Hectorville, South Australia. 3 people killed, 3 people injured. Then we have a murder-suicide on the 9th of September 2014. This was the Hunt family murders at Lockhart, New South Wales. 4 people killed. Shortly after that, on the 22nd of October 2014 at Logan, Victoria, 3 people killed there, a shooting murder of a neighbour family. Then not too far under that again, we've got 12th of November 2014 at Moama, New South Wales, 2 people killed. Then the one that we all remember is the Sydney siege on 15th to the 16th of December 2014, where Man Monis, there was 3 people killed and 4 people injured at that massacre. Now keep in mind too that Man Monis was not licensed, had an unregistered firearm, and was also in possession of a pump-action shotgun, which is restricted here and prohibited from sports and target use under an A&B licence. Then we go further down here to the 2nd of October 2015, Parramatta, the police shooting there. 2 people were shot dead, including the offender. Then shortly after that, 4th of January 2016, Port Lincoln, South Australia, 3 people shot dead there. 7th of March 2016, Ingleburn, New South Wales, 2 more people shot and 2 more people injured in that incident. So this is what I'm saying, guys, is you don't have clear justification, in my view, to say there's been no massacres in Australia since the implementation of the 1996 gun laws. I mean, what was that I clearly read out? People have died. Now let's come back to John Howard's view that getting rid of the military type semi-automatics is going to create a safer place for everyone. There's a lot of people that believe that also in the US and different parts of the world. But let's have a look here in Australia, especially prior to 1996, to see how much homicide in relation to firearm use that those military style firearms were actually responsible for. Okay, so jumping on to the Australian Bureau of Statistics website again, they've actually got a table here with the type of firearm death by type of firearm involved from the period of 1980 to 1995, which is fantastic because it gives us an idea of what firearms were responsible for all the homicides prior to 1996. So if we have a look here, it's got the homicides here. Handgun, we have 92 deaths in that 16-year period. Shotgun, 326. Hunting rifle, 368. Military style, 27. So only 27 deaths in a 16-year period for military style firearms. Yet in that same period, out of 813 deaths in total for that 16-year period, a hunting rifle was used to kill 368 people, which is a whopping 63.2% of all deaths involving firearms being homicide during that 16-year period. In that same period, military style firearms accounted for just 1.3% of all deaths. So that brings me back to the comment by John Howard, is how can you say by limiting these powerful type weapons, meaning semi-automatic military type or military style firearms, that you're ensuring the public safety? I don't quite understand that because the stats don't support that. Yet what was the biggest killer was hunting rifles, and you've permitted them to be used quite freely up until this day. Okay, so guys, it's a bit of a wrap up and a fair bit of information to take in. A lot of people will be saying, well, our gun laws are still great and they should stay the way they are. Well, I disagree, and this is why. Let's have a look at one of our closest neighbours over in New Zealand. In New Zealand, you can have semi-automatic rifles, semi-automatic shotguns, pump-action shotguns. You can have access to suppressors, silencers, freely available. You also don't have registration of long arms. You can also get fully automatic machine guns on a collector's license in New Zealand. Yet they have a lower crime rate with firearms per capita than what we do here in Australia with our strict gun laws. So how can that be? Let's take a look at the data. Okay, so I'm on the Law Library of Congress website, which is a government website from the US, and it looks at firearms control legislation and policy as it relates to New Zealand. Now, it'll give you a rundown of their laws, which is pretty much, as I told you, you can virtually have anything you want over there, provided you've got the license for it. Now, the part I'm very interested in here is the firearm death rate, okay, the homicide rate with firearms in New Zealand. They monitor it here from 1994 down to 2011. Now let's just compare some of this, and interestingly they do say here, a 2011 study that compared long-term firearm homicide trends in 3 countries with similar social histories but different legislative regimes, Australia, Canada and New Zealand, concluded that the most pronounced decline in firearm homicide over the past 2 decades occurred in New Zealand. But, you know, how many times will you hear the antis tell you, if we have access to semi-automatic long arms, it will be loosening our gun laws and there will be massacres and death and chaos on the street. Well, if that's the case, why don't they have that in New Zealand? It's a very interesting question, that. And when you look at 2011, in the entire population of New Zealand, okay, there was three homicides using a firearm. Let's have a look compared to Australia in 2011. 2011, we had 41 deaths. Now, keep in mind too, guys, the population here in Australia is roughly 24 million people. In New Zealand, you've got about 4.5 million people. Okay, so roughly you could probably say maybe about 5 times the amount of population in Australia. Well, 3 deaths, that only equivalates to 15 deaths here in Australia. That's what it should be for 2011 if we compare it to New Zealand. But we've got over twice that at 41. So this is what I'm saying, guys, is in my view, I believe there is something significantly wrong with the Australian gun laws when you have a country like New Zealand that has access to suppressors, no registration of long arms, semi-automatic firearms, even full automatic firearms under a collector's license, and they can sport a lower per capita crime rate with firearms than what we have here in Australia. How does that work? So the question I ask you guys is, are Australian gun laws really working? I hope you enjoy the review, guys, and I hope it's given you an education as to why the licensed firearm community here in Australia have just had enough of the lies. In our view, all we need to do is have a license to stop the mentally ill and the criminals from obtaining a firearm. Once you're licensed, as proven in New Zealand, doesn't matter what firearm you have, you are of no greater risk to the community as the next licensed person, and the statistics are clearly there to prove that. Okay guys, hope you enjoyed the review, so till next time, we'll catch you then.